So, ladies and gentlemen, this is Jordan Syatt. He is actually my first male guest other than my own husband. So, welcome to the Tarot Talk, Jordan. Thank you so much for being here.
That's a huge honor. I don't take that lightly. Thank you.
Yeah,
I
of
appreciate you
course.
having me on.
Yeah. So, tell everyone, who is Jordan?
Oh, who is Jordan? I am a husband. I am a father. I am a short, bald, nerdy Jewish guy who likes to lift weights. Think that's pretty much it. That covers it.
I love actually that you started with that because most of the people I have on the podcast is like, okay, so I'm a coach and this is what my business is and this is what I do for a living. But you started with father and husband. And I think that is so awesome. And I would love to hear just like how that shifted who you are as a human being.
Yeah, I mean, the way I think about it is like if I lost my entire business, I'd still be fine. I'd still have my family. But if I lost my family, like I wouldn't give a shit about my business. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
it's like obvious, like husband, father comes first above everything. You could probably hear my wife just walked in the door and my daughter is gonna go nuts in a second. But I mean, I always knew I wanted to be a dad. That was like never a question in my mind. Like I've always wanted to have kids. I grew up in a house that had a very poor marriage. Like my mom and my dad had an awful, awful, awful marriage. And fortunately, they ended up getting divorced. I think they got divorced way too late. Like it took a long time until I was like 16, 17. And I like always wish they got divorced earlier. Um, but because that was what I saw, I just always assumed marriage was a bad idea. And not only that, I love stand-up comedy, and I don't know if you like stand-up comedy. You're in Austin, so there's a lot of
Yeah, for
stand-up,
sure.
like great stand-up comedy in Austin.
Yeah.
Um, one of the things you'll say if you're watching a great stand-up comic is you'll be, oh, it's so true. That's so true. And a lot of stand-up comics, they make fun of marriage. Both men and women comics, they make fun of their spouses. And so between the horrible example that I had seen and then also loving stand-up and seeing how many people didn't like marriage, I was like, why would I ever get married? Like I'd rather just adopt and have kids and be a single dad. And then I met my wife and I was like, oh no, this is right. And I also saw other people with wonderful marriages and I was exposed to some great mentors and great people in my life who were good examples of what being a good spouse looked like. And so that shaped my perspective. And so we got married and we both want a big family. Like she's ready to give birth any minute. We're very excited about it. And we both want to have a lot of kids and just have a very close-knit family, hopefully.
I love that. And I can relate to that as well. Like, I grew up in a divorced family and then my mom got remarried and it was like, you guys shouldn't be together. And then they actually ended up getting
Oh,
divorced. But what did
geez.
it feel like to you to like want them to get a divorce, like as a kid?
I mean, I didn't want to live in the same house as my dad is really what
Yeah.
it boiled down to. It was just like it was not a good situation. So it was like it wasn't even like the divorce was just like this is I just don't want to be living under the same roof is really what it was. And so like the divorce it was like that's what I was asking for in my head. Um but it was like I just need separation. Like
Yeah.
I need distance is really what it was. And so and it was for everyone. It was for my mom, for my brother, for me. So and it's funny, I'm sure you get it too when you tell people your parents are divorced. They're probably, oh, I'm so sorry. I'm so
Yeah.
sorry. It's like, no, it's a good thing. Like it is, I'm so glad that that happened. So it was, and it also, I think when it happens later, when you're a teenager, you're much more aware of what's going on. When you're younger, it's hard to really comprehend. Like you can see things, but it's hard to comprehend the actual situation. And so yeah, I mean, by the time I was 14, 15, 16, I was just ready to, you know, be out of that situation.
You and your wife to realize like that was the person that you actually did want to take a chance on and get married to.
Um, it was really interesting. So we dated long distance for 2 years before we moved in together. And that was actually interesting because she was living in Atlanta, I was in New York, and she wanted to get engaged before we moved in, and I didn't want to get engaged before we moved in. And so that was a whole big discussion. Finally, we were like, "Yeah, all right, we'll move in. You'll move from Atlanta before we decide." But the a lot of people say long distance relationships can't work. They don't work. And I used to believe that, but then I was thinking logically, I was like, well, I know a lot of close distance relationships that don't work. You know, like people live right down the street from one another, they go to work together. It's like it's got to be a happy medium, and there's also got to be it's got to just be a good fit. I think one of the greatest benefits of having a long distance relationship early on was that we were both forced to communicate. Like that was the only way we could connect. Like we would see each other once every 6 weeks. So when we're talking, it's like we would have real long, in-depth conversations, and you couldn't mask anything with lust. Like you couldn't mask anything with the physical side of things. It was, this is who this person is. And I think when, like you, I'm sure basically everyone listening might have an experience in which there was someone who was a terrible fit for them, but the physical side was really good. So they were able to, um, make excuses or justifications and overlook big red flags. And it wasn't possible with the long distance. And it also showed we both really wanted it to work. I was still in a phase of, I don't know if this is my like person yet, but after it's so funny. Here's the reason why I wasn't sure. I wasn't sure because like she was so sweet and so great and so wonderful. I was like we were only seeing each other once every 6 weeks. Like, is this real?
Mhm.
And like within a month after moving in, I was like, oh no, is just who she is. Like that she's just amazing. And it got to a point where I would ask myself, what would my life be like without her versus with her? And it,
Mhm.
it became like I need her in my life. It was just a no-brainer. And so,
Yeah.
well, if that's the answer, then what am I waiting for? And that's where we are.
Yeah, I love that. It's funny for me, we were dating for like 4 or 5 years. I was like, "Yeah, I never need to get married," and there was this one little switch. I think it was just like him with my family, my husband with my family that I was like looked at him and was like, "Why aren't we married?" He was like, "You told me you didn't wanna get married." And then we got engaged the next year and, it's been almost 10 years now. But I think it was the same thing for me, like growing up in this family where it was just so broken, and I was like, "This isn't gonna it didn't work for them, why would it work for me? Like, this is my environment." But this is, like, a prime example of, like, you not being your environment and that you can change generationally. So,
Yes.
how do you see, like, you raising your kids in this now, like, whole new world that you're in, just moving forward with your family environment?
Yeah, I mean, you bring up a really good point, and the research on this is very interesting because it's pretty clear if you grew up in an abusive house, like if you have an abusive father and a son is more likely to be abusive.
Mhm.
If a mother is abused, the daughter is more likely to be abused, right? It's like you often what you see is what you replicate in your life very often. And the research is pretty clear on that. In my, not just my N equals one experience, but also my observational experiences, it can go that way, but it can also go the exact opposite. And that's sort of how it's gone for me. Like the way that I view it is I was able to look at what was going on in my house and say that's literally the exact opposite of what I want to do. Now, there's also inherent problems with that because if you try and overcorrect, I'm probably going to do things that my daughter is going to be like, "Ugh, I hated that." Like, for example, we would make jokes when I was a kid that my dad like he didn't know what position I would play in sports, or he didn't know my brother or my teacher's names because he would never go to the parent teacher meetings, he would never go to the sports events, like none of that. He just wasn't there. And as a kid, we would joke and laugh, but looking back, like it hurt that like he didn't know that. And so for me, I'm like, I want to be at every sporting event. I want to go to every parent teacher conference. I want to go to every play, every dance recital, every chess match, whatever you're doing, I'm there. And it's like I could imagine her being like, "You're fucking smothering me. Like, give me a break." If she's doing a dance recital, and I don't know if they have, I don't know how many recitals, but if they have five, I'll go to all five. I will go to every one. Like, I want to be there. I like so. I think I saw and I experienced exactly what I don't want, which is equally as powerful. And I just was brought up. My mom is incredible, and um, I think I'm fortunate enough to be able to see it and recognize what I didn't like enough to actually make the change. Whereas many people, they stay in an environment where they're not going to change. And I've been so blessed and had so many opportunities to have other father figures and mentors in my life that showed me what a good husband is and what a good father is, and to also replicate what they do.
Now, do you have any siblings? I think you have a
I
brother.
have one brother. I have one brother. He's like 3 years older than me.
Is he similar to you in like making this change in his life, or what's he like?
So we are in almost every way complete opposites. Um, but I know he does want kids, and so him and we actually didn't talk for like 10 years, and only in the last like 3 years did we reconnect. And my daughter loves him now, and
Mhm.
it's honestly the greatest blessing. Like we are getting very close and getting closer every week, which is wonderful. Um, he was very overweight, like very overweight, hundreds of pounds overweight. And
Mhm.
so finally, what brought us back is like he was distancing himself from me because of an argument that we had when I was like 18. And it was funny because we brought it up to each other recently, and we both remembered it very differently, obviously. Um, but he eventually got to a point where he's like, I need help. And he was like, hey man, I need to lose weight. I want to have a girlfriend. I want to have kids one day. Like, and I know my weight is preventing me from doing that. And so he lost like 150 pounds. And
Mhm.
he just got out of a long-term relationship, unfortunately, but he's in a very different place now. But I think he wants to do the same thing. Like, I think he wants to be an amazing dad, and he wants to I think right now he's waiting until he's a little bit more set in his career. He's a stand-up comedian, and he's crushing it. Like, he's doing great. But he wants to wait until it's a little bit more um stable, which is just
Mhm.
it's an unstable career until like you've made it. But I think we both are very similar in what we want to do as like a present father and a present husband.
Now, did you wait until he came to you to ask for advice or for a change? And like a sub question to that was, did you want to help him before he was ready?
Yeah, I always wanted a relationship with him. Um, we didn't talk for like 10 years, and I would reach out pretty consistently. It started out more frequently, and it got less and less frequent as they weren't reciprocated. Um, and then I saw like the issues he was having, whether it was at family events or online. He has actually a pretty big social media presence as well, and um, I definitely wanted to help. And anytime we interacted, which was rare, I would always say like, "Hey, if you need anything, I'm here. Let me know." I wouldn't give him advice. I would just say, "If you need anything, I'm here."
Mhm.
And when he reached out, I was so excited. I was like, "Yeah, absolutely. Let's do it." Let's like I went 100% over the top, but I never would give unsolicited advice. And I've done the same thing with my mom, who struggled with her weight. Like, my entire family has struggled. I'm the only one who's not like hasn't severely struggled with their weight. And that's only because I was terrible in school and I loved sports. Um, Everyone else was amazing in school and hated sports. And so
Mm.
like I've just been active because I've enjoyed it, not because like I haven't struggled with my own fitness. Everyone else in my family has. So same thing with my mom, where like I just always let them know I'm here. And my mom recently, it was funny, like once my brother started doing it, then my mom got involved, and they've both improved as a result of it. But I know many people struggle with family. They want to help, they want to help, they want to help, but they almost become overbearing, and then they push people away. And so as long as they know that they always knew that I loved them, I was there for them. And when they were finally ready, then it has worked out wonderfully.
Where does the balance come in with that though? So if you see them at events or you hear them complaining about certain situations about their weight, like how do you step in as this kind of neutral person but there to help as well?
Yeah, so it's a great question. And I will say in my situation, um, they weren't actively complaining about their weight, which I
Mm.
think is a big distinction. Like if they were actively complaining and being open and honest and saying, "Hey, I'm trying to do this, I'm trying to do that," then I would probably be slightly more assertive and offer more insight. With them, it was very rarely would they bring it up. I think mainly out of shame and guilt and anxiety and fear. So I'm not going to bring it up. I'm not going to be like, hey, you've got to do this, especially with my brother who we didn't have a close relationship and I didn't want to push him further away. With my mom, there were times where, like when I lived in New York and I was in the West Village and you had to climb up 5 flights of stairs and it was really difficult for her. And we'd get upstairs and she'd be, oh, that was like really tough. I'd be like, is there something I can help with? Like maybe when you're at home. And she'd be like, no, I'm fine. And that would be the end of it. It's difficult because you really want to help. But if you understand behavior change, there's an amazing model, the trans theoretical model of behavior change. If they're not ready, it's not going to work. And there are some things you can do to try and move them along this like to get them ready that usually comes with education. With my family, like they know the issues. Like they're not unaware. And most people, especially when it comes to weight, like they're not unaware. They're hyper aware. They're more aware than you could ever imagine. It's constantly playing in their head.
Yeah.
And so, while you really want to go out of your way to tell them what to do and all that, like oftentimes that'll push them further and further and further away. And so I think playing the long game and understanding that like as long as they know you love them and you're there and they when they are ready, if they are ready, they will feel comfortable coming to you. And fortunately that's what happened. They both have ended up coming to me and they've both been a great support system for each other as well. And also understanding that they're an adult and they can make their own decisions. And it's hard to let that go and you got to give them their own agency because you love them, but it's like they're an adult and they really are going to have to make their own decisions. The best thing you can do is let them know that you always love them. And if and when they're ready for help, you're there.
Now, you said that you haven't ever struggled yourself with weight. So, what originally got you into like the act of educating people about weight loss?
So I come from a family of people who were outrageously educated, like very higher education, doctors, lawyers, professors, superintendents, and no one was into fitness whatsoever. I was and still am the black sheep in that I was in special education. I was not good in school at all. And you like what you're good at and you hate what you suck at. And so I hated school and I don't know where it comes from, but I'm athletic. And so I got involved in wrestling when I was 8 years old and I fell in love with it. And so I wrestled for many, many years from 8 to 18. I did soccer and baseball and I loved it. And I also my mom would make jokes because we would go to when you're a kid you have birthday parties when and the parents would chaperone at the birthday parties. And so when I was a kid, I, I don't like cake. I like ice cream cake. Ice cream cake is fucking awesome, but I don't like cake. Cake is just like not my thing. So if there was ever cake, I just wouldn't eat it. But I'd be like, can I have the fruit? Like if there was watermelon, oh my God, I'd be like, I would rather have the fruit. And my mom would always make jokes, being like, "You are the only kid who doesn't eat cake and who wants fruit." It's just I enjoy fresh foods. I like it's just what I like. So very blessed from that perspective. And when I got to high school as a wrestler, I ended up making varsity as a freshman, and I was mainly competing against juniors and seniors. So when you're 14 years old, going up against juniors and like 16, 17, 18 year olds, the strength difference is dramatic. And so I wrote an email to a gym a couple of towns over from me, and I was like, "Listen, I'll take the trash out, I'll clean the floor. I just want to learn how to get stronger." And I was very blessed. They took me under their wing, and they were very science based. So I started working at a strength and conditioning facility when I was 14 years old. And through doing that, they started letting me work with their clients there. And the first guy that I worked with, the very first one, his name was Fred. He was 68 years old. He had shoulder issues, he had rotator cuff issues. And I remember I went through the whole consultation process with him. Like, and they were right next to me. I didn't do it alone, but they were like chaperoning me as I did this. And he just said his main goal was he wanted to pick up his grandson without hurting his shoulder. And I remember being so excited because I was at this point I was probably 15 because I had to be there for a year before they like started letting me work with clients. 15 years old, like I just wanted to look good naked and be a good wrestler. I didn't think there were other goals outside of that. Like you're your own, everything is in your own universe at 15, at least it was for me. And so I remember getting really excited to help Fred achieve his goals because that's what Fred wanted, not achieve my goals because that's what I wanted. And so immediately I fell in love with the coaching process of actually helping other people with what they want. And that's why one of the reasons I think many people who call themselves personal trainers struggle nowadays is because they became a personal trainer because they like going to the gym, not realizing that coaching people is a completely different ball game. And coaching people, you might love going to the gym, but you might hate coaching people. It's
Mhm.
two very different things. And so that's how I started really getting involved in coaching people and enjoying that process.
What about the weight loss component though? So, and I know your story about how you were world record deadlifter, you worked at
Mm.
Westside Barbell, you really got into strength, but I feel like a lot of people come to you for this like calorie deficit,
Yeah, 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 yeah.
nutrition advice. So like where did that come into play or was that kind of like a part of the training program for Fred or for these people that came in?
No, so that was a performance-based gym. It was actually a kettlebell facility. It was an awesome, awesome gym. And I thought I was only going to do performance-based training. And so from there I got into powerlifting. I was competing and
Mm,
the for the first few years of my online business as well. So from like I don't know, 14 until like 23, so almost 10 years of my coaching was basically just performance stuff. And I would study muscle gain and I would study fat loss and I would study this stuff, but my interest was mainly performance. And when I was competing at a very high level with powerlifting and I was documenting it, a ton of my clients were just, I'm really interested in powerlifting. So that was a lot of what I was working with. And then as my powerlifting career came to an end and I became bored with powerlifting, which I'd been doing it for almost 10 years.
mhm,
And my main goal was to deadlift 4 times my body weight. I wanted to deadlift 530 pounds at 132, and I did it. But after that much deadlifting, like I was burned out of it. I was just burned out. I was burned out and bored. Um, Powerlifting is an amazing sport. After 10 years of squat, bench, dead, you're just craving other shit.
mhm,
And so, as that as my career in powerlifting came to an end, I naturally transitioned more towards a lifestyle approach and focus, and less of a competitive focus and more just on everyday people who want to get stronger. And the main reason that the majority of my clients are women, the vast majority. The reason that happened is actually it's a little bit comical. So when I was really reaching the peak of my powerlifting career, and this is probably 2012, 2011, 12, 13, 14 in that range, women started powerlifting like way more. And in that time frame, like when I first started powerlifting, there were a few women at a meet. By the time I retired, there were in women only meets. There were like huge, like women in powerlifting just skyrocketed.
mm,
And so obviously if you're in powerlifting, you want to get as strong as possible. Well, most of the dudes in powerlifting are these huge, like gargantuan, especially at this time. Now in 2024, you can be lean and it's like lean power. You don't have to be huge and bulky. But back then it was the GFH get fucking huge. It was like you eat whatever, mass moves mass. And so you had these huge dudes lifting, and the women were like, I don't want to look like that. And here I am, 5'4", 132 pounds. I'm not jacked. I'm not like big, but I'm lifting more than a lot of the big dudes. And they're like, I want that. I want to be strong, but I don't want to be huge. And so that is where a huge a portion of my career like took off in terms of women wanting to get stronger and leaner without getting like much bigger. And so obviously then I really had to understand fat loss and know that more. And so that's where that started to come into play. And then of course, if we look at now, like population wise globally, we have an obesity issue. We have most people have a big problem with their weight. They often want to lose weight. And so most people are coming to me with that as their goal at this point. But that's how it started with people, with women wanting to not be big like I was. Or, like I was small. They wanted to be small like me, but strong like me.
Okay. All right. I love that. So now, though, We talked about this like behavioral change and the fact that people kind of know what they need to do to lose fat. Do you still feel like the general population that come to you or in your sphere know what they need to do?
It's a great question. I think I think they do. I think they often here's how I would phrase it. If you were to sit down with an individual and have them verbalize
Mhm.
what they think they need to do, it would 9 times out of 10 come out of their mouth, no problem. I need to exercise more. I need to eat higher quality foods. Like they might not say the words calorie deficit. They might not know
Mhm.
what that means, but like they would say, I need to eat more fruits and vegetables. I probably need to eat a little bit more protein. They might say, like, I don't know which foods are high protein. Well, that's an easy fix. We can Google it. But like, they generally know they need to exercise more and they need to eat higher quality and maybe a little bit less. Maybe they need to watch their alcohol intake maybe 9.5 times out of 10, this is coming out of their mouth. When they're sitting on their phone, not talking and seeing a lot of conflicting information, that's when they get confused because there's a lot of conflicting information out there. And that is one of the major problems. And it's a major one. It's a big one because like people will screenshot. I'm sure you get the same thing. They'll screen record like my video saying one thing and they scroll down and then there's glucose goddess saying the exact opposite. So who do you believe and how do you know? With that being said, I do think the vast majority of people are aware that they need to eat higher quality and they need to focus on their portion sizes more and they need to be regular exercisers. And this is why I lose my shit on how much supplement content I see on social media because it's like creators are making content on supplements not because they're that important, but because one, they're making money from it, and two, because they think people want to hear about it. It's like it's not anywhere near the most important thing you need to be doing. So I completely agree if what you're going to say is that like there's a lot of conflicting information and many people are confused.
Mhm.
Completely agree with that. I think if they sit down and actually verbalize what they think they need to do, they'd prob most people would know on a very on a pretty decent level what they've got to get done.
No, you said, who do we believe and how do you know? How do they actually
Ooh, you're asking the great questions. You're just rapid firing great question after great
know?
question. Um, it's a wonderful question. And the truth is, and this is not the fun answer, but like there's no definitive way to be like, well, this person's full of shit and this person's not. There's no definitive way. And by the way, the only person, actually, I'll rephrase it. I don't agree with anybody else's methods 100%, including my own. And what I mean by that is I look at things that I did 5 years ago. I was like, oh, that was shit. Shouldn't have done that.
Yeah.
So like there's no one in the world who I 100% agree with, including my friends and my colleagues, like, and including myself from previous. And I guarantee I'm doing things right now that in 5 years, I'll be like, that wasn't optimal. That wasn't as good as it should have been. So it's impossible to know who's 100% right. The only way to really know is to number one, try it. That's a
Mm.
dangerous thing to say because there are some things that might not be good. Like, for example, carnivore, I think is a dangerous thing to do. Um, and especially for a long duration of time. If you do it as potentially an elimination diet to see if you have any issues, that's one thing. But as a lifestyle, I think it's dangerous. And I have no problem saying that. I'm sure you get this all the time. People say, well, all right, well, one person says I can't eat carbs. Another person says I can't eat carbs as long as I'm eating the right amount of calories. How do I know what's true? And I'm saying, try it. I'm not going to try and convince you they're wrong. Number one, from a behavioral perspective, psychology perspective, if I try and convince you they're wrong, very often you're going to go the other way. I've learned I'm not trying to convince you. You can believe me or not. Here's the way that I would structure it. Here's your calories, here's your protein, here's your fiber. Give it a shot for 30 days. And like when I say actually like give it a shot, do it, track
Mhm.
it, be aware. And then you can give theirs a shot and see, and you might lose weight. And then you have to ask yourself, okay, I did both. They both lost weight. On one of them, I was able to eat whatever I wanted in moderation. On one of them, I wasn't. Which one is more realistic? There's your fucking answer. It's like you get to decide, but the only way to know is to try. And I don't think a lot of people realize is when you sign on with a one-on-one coach, a lot of what you're paying for the coach to do trial and error, by the way. Like the coach isn't giving you things being like, this is the final plan, like this is everything you need. It's I'm gonna watch you execute this plan. And then based on how you respond, I will adjust as needed. What you're paying for is, yes, accountability, but also an ideally expert set of eyes to adjust as you need. Everyone's guessing and checking. That's how this works. You guess and check. That's what we do. And a coach will be able to guess and check from an educational perspective and an objective perspective. But if you don't want to do it with a coach, then you've got to guess and check on your own. And that's okay. But you've got to fucking try it. Or if you're one of the very few people who can actually read and critique research, wonderful, go for it. But there are also super smart people who can read and critique research who get it wrong and continue to spout their horse shit. So I think the guess and check method is the best method.
I think either you've said it or someone has said it in our realm, but like all data is good data.
Mhm.
And you talk about counting calories a lot. And I personally am not a counting calorie person. I lean more into the intuitive eating and really kind of focus on protein and fiber as like the two
Yeah.
numbers that I'll look at with clients. Now, if someone were to come to you 9 out of 10 times and say, this is what I know I need to do, how would you adjust their nutrition for them to actually take that data and run with it? Would you have them counting calories and macros and all the things?
So they don't need to. I do think it's a really great place to start. Um, and I mentioned an elimination diet a few minutes ago.
Mhm,
I don't think that's something everyone needs, but if someone's having, like, say, like allergies or food issues, sometimes you'll do an elimination diet and then slowly introduce foods back in to see what's causing the allergies.
mhm.
And any expert who's doing it properly is saying this is very short term. Like, we're not removing all of these foods for your whole life. This is just a very short term thing so we can get more education to see what's causing the issue. I think calorie counting is should be treated the same way.
Mm.
If you want to calorie count your whole life, fine. Once you get good at it, it could take 5 minutes a day. But for someone who doesn't want to do it their whole life, you could do it for a week. And you could just like, because have you ever counted calories? Have you ever weighed and measured food?
Once in life, but it was a very restricted, very not good place for me
Okay.
personally.
Okay. But so you did do it. So like, did you ever like measure your peanut butter?
Yeah.
Was that one of the most devastating moments of your life?
Yeah, for sure. For sure.
So that moment changed your life. I don't know a single person who has measured their peanut butter and that hasn't been a moment they remember forever. Like, you can't look at it the same, and you can't look at a tablespoon for anything the same anymore because you weighed and measured the peanut butter just one time. You need it once. You don't need it for a
Yeah.
whole week. Weigh it once. That's all you need.
Yeah.
So, um, I think from that perspective, if you just do it one time,
Mhm.
you could spend 24 hours where you weigh and measure and you count the calories for what you eat. And that would be good. And then the rest of the week, you don't want to weigh and measure? Cool. Just write everything down. Just write what you eat down in a journal. You don't need to count the calories. You don't need to weigh it. Just if you just write the food that you eat and you become more aware of what you're putting, because there's so much that we just like
Yeah,
shovel in without thinking.
for
You just
sure.
become a little bit more mindful by writing it down. That in and of itself will do wonders. I don't think everyone needs to count. I think a huge percentage of my clients don't count, and that's totally fine. But I do think it's a really, really good thing to experience for at least a short duration of time so that you can get a better understanding of what you're putting in your mouth.
I
Um,
Yeah,
yeah.
I appreciate you saying that because calorie deficit, this is how we lose weight. But I think that even just weighing and looking at the label and like seeing what a serving size is without even like counting that is super valuable for you. For example, just to know how much protein you're eating. People are like, "Oh, I think it's like 60." And I'm like, "How much chicken are you eating?" "Oh, well, like a handful size." Well, that's a lot of chicken right there. Why don't we weigh it? Let's see how much that actually is. And then you can use that as a good baseline moving forward. Right. So I
Yes.
think just like the whole awareness is huge here, right? We're missing that component of just our health and wellness journey. We're looking on our phone, we're scrolling, we're seeing, oh, this person said this, I'm going to do this, instead of actually being like more body aware of like, oh, that fueled me. Oh, I felt like shit after that. Oh, like I don't like this.
Yep. I remember when the first time I was 18 or 19, I think I was 19, the first time I started tracking calories and macros. And I was following a program and I was supposed to get like 150 grams of protein a
Mhm.
day. And I was like, what the? I was like, how am I going to hit 150 grams of protein a day? and I had never weighed or measured my food before. And then I found out what 3 ounces of chicken looked like. And I was like,
Yeah.
oh, that's
Yeah.
nothing. Like I'm getting way more than that. And I was also way overeating calories because I was eating like triple what a serving was. And so it not only from the caloric perspective, but also like a lot of people are like, I don't know how I'm gonna get this much protein in. And I'm like, do you know how small 3 ounces of fucking chicken is? Like, I
Yeah.
guarantee you're probably eating way more than you think you are from a
Right.
protein perspective. So it's there are so many wonderful things you get from it. And I'm all about intuitive eating. I think it's a wonderful tool. I think that for most people, in order to become an intuitive eater, you have to have a certain level of education before you can intuitively eat. Because I think that intuition comes from a place of education. If we were living not in a world where you could, I mean, what a blessing to be able to walk in your kitchen and have a pantry full of food and not have to
Mm.
worry about that. But like, if we look at historical timeline in the world of how long you could walk into your kitchen and have a pantry full of food and you don't have to go out and hunt for your food, and never mind everything in there is like super highly palatable and very calorically dense, like it would be a teeny tiny blip on the radar in terms of the timeline of the world. So I think the idea of being able to intuitively eat without any education is easier when you're way more active and you don't have constant access to food.
Mm.
But when we have constant access to food, and I know not everyone in the world does, but if you're listening to this podcast, you've probably got access to food. Um, if you are blessed enough to have access to food and almost any food you want at basically any point in time, now it's not just about intuition. Now it's about your behavior,
Mm.
right? Now it's about self-control. Now it's about listening to your what your body's telling you. Before, people like it wasn't about listening to your body. It's like if there's food, I need to eat this food because it's going
Mm.
to go bad and I don't know when I'm going to have access to food again. And so it's a very different world that we live in, that even 100 years ago they wouldn't understand where we are now. They wouldn't get it. It was like, what do you mean you have Oreos? Like what? That's insane, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah. Do you feel like intuitive eating can be moderation eating?
Yes.
Can it be the same?
So I mean, have you been attacked by the intuitive eating crowd before?
No, I actually haven't. And I talk about it a lot, but I talk about it in very neutral. I live in the gray. I'm not black
I
or
love
white.
it.
I'm like, it's very balanced. And so I'm
Yeah.
not like, oh, I'm an intuitive eater, but I'm not like, I count calories, you know? So
Yes.
I live in
Yeah,
this
yeah.
space. So I haven't, but just like to give the audience an understanding of like, can you be both? Can you do a little bit of both?
100%. Well, so
Yeah.
I asked if you've been attacked by them because, and I haven't in the last few years. It feels like it's still 2020 in some ways.
Yeah.
It's crazy that it's 2024. Like it's almost 2025. Like what the
Yeah.
fuck? Where did time go?
Crazy.
But around that 2018, 2019, 2020 time frame, intuitive eating was like a big
Big.
thing,
Yeah.
but not in the way that you're describing it. Intuitive
Yeah.
eating was a big thing because a book was written called Intuitive Eating,
Yeah.
and it's specifically for people who struggle with disordered eating and ways to improve your relationship with food. And so when you say, can it be moderation eating? You and me, same page. Yep, 100%.
Yeah.
The people, diehard fans of this book, would say that's not the same thing. Intuitive eating is its own method. And like I would get reamed out. I'm sure there are threads on the internet about me from these people saying I'm using the term wrong. I completely agree with you. Moderation eating, 100%.
Yeah.
We can use them interchangeably. But the diehard fans would be livid. So if there's any of them listening, you might get a bad review. But everyone
That's
else should be giving 5-star reviews because it's an amazing podcast.
Now, what about carbs? Should we stop eating carbs? Like totally just stop doing that as
Yeah,
a whole?
no carbs. They're terrible. You know what the funniest one is when they say they're not necessary for life. It's just such a stupid reason that people will say not to eat carbs. It's so dumb.
Yeah.
Like you're not necessary for life, so like you shouldn't be eating them. I'm like, all right, well, air conditioning isn't necessary for life, so say goodbye to your air conditioning, say goodbye to your bed, say goodbye to your car.
Yeah.
It's like if that's the metric by which you define whether or not you should be using it, then you're gonna say goodbye to a lot of shit. So I honestly think that I think that one of the main reasons people fail with their diets is because they try and cut carbs.
Mm.
It's like it's never mind how delicious they are, but like technically, yeah, you don't need them to survive. But are we going to ignore how much better they make you feel, how much they fuel your performance, how much they make staying consistent with your diet easier? I mean, the benefits of them are astronomical. I don't know any high level athlete who does a ketogenic diet or does a low carb diet because of how important they are for your performance. Now, should we be moderating them? Do I think some people are eating too many? Yes, but the more nuanced answer would be I think people are just eating too much in general. It's not just carbs. I think they're eating too much of everything. And
Mm.
so if you reduce your calories, then almost inherently your carbohydrates will come down, but doesn't mean you have to remove them or even limit them dramatically. Just slight reductions in calories and then fill the rest with what you'd like as long as your calories, protein, and fiber are hit. And then carbs and fat will fall into place.
Now, the real question is, what about carrots?
Is that not insane? Is that not
I
insane?
feel like every time I go on your page, there's a new video on carrots. Like,
It happens, it just keeps coming up. And it's the post that
so
keeps on
funny.
giving. Like it's
Yeah.
for some reason people really like it's fun. It's just comical,
Yeah.
but it's also so sad that
Yeah.
like there are real people are legitimately scared of eating carrots. And if you want to be really depressed about it, go look in the comment section every time women are commenting like my doctor told me I shouldn't be eating carrots because of the
Mm.
sugar content. Like it's like your doctor. Like, and this is, I
Yeah.
think our generation is very different than our parents' generation. My mom, her generation is like you, what the doctor says goes. You believe the
Yeah.
doctor always. I think
For
our
sure.
generation is growing up being like, okay, well, I'll take everything with a grain of salt. There are many different educated opinions. Let's sort of do my own research and dissect from there. Then I can't begin to tell you how many hundreds of doctors I've heard of saying that carrots shouldn't be eaten because of the sugar. It's just, it's incredible.
Yeah. Yeah. It's silly and it's funny, but people keep asking. So it's like,
Yes.
figured I'd bring it up. This was a joke, by the way. You're allowed to eat carrots. Okay. I want to talk about alcohol because I know that you drink in moderation. I'm actually don't drink it at all anymore. But
Let's go.
alcohol,
When did you stop?
yeah, it stopped almost 2 years ago. Now I've kind of
Congrats.
gone like in these like phases in and out. But for me personally, there was a lot of things. It was sleep and my energy levels. And like the next day, just one glass of wine, I would like go through my workout and feel like shit. But
Really?
also, yeah, also for me, alcohol runs my family. And
Mm,
I saw it a lot and didn't want anything to do with it. And if I can be this quote unquote role model of like not drinking and having a healthy, happy life, that would help. Right. So
I love that.
I know that you do drink in moderation and such, but how does alcohol really change your performance or just your health and wellness journey as a whole?
So I'm a big fan of alcohol, I've got to say.
Okay, that's gonna be a
And
title.
it's so funny, like, right, and I'm sure you've seen it, like in our end of the industry, there's a big push towards no alcohol, no alcohol, no
For
alcohol,
sure.
which I think can be wonderful. But you and I have both been in the industry long enough to know that the industry runs on a pendulum of extremes. And
For sure.
like right now, it's like very anti-alcohol in our end of the industry. Like globally, I think it's very pro-alcohol. Like all these celebrities are making their own alcohols and selling it. But in our tiny world of the internet, it's like very anti-alcohol right now. And I think giving this little bit of perspective will help you understand my opinion. Um, I view part of my role within the fitness industry to bring balance. I like to be in that little gray area as well. And I like to think of myself as like a way to moderate the extremes that we see. So right now, it's we're seeing such a push for no alcohol that I'm almost being like showing it more.
Yeah.
Just not because like I'm drinking it more, not be just I'm just showing it more just to be like if you want, you can do this in moderation. Like it's okay. And then, not if, but when the pendulum swings back, and when we see coaches being like, I'm drinking, you should drink more. This study came out because there's always a new fucking study supporting
Yeah.
whatever you
Yeah.
want. Then I'll be like, I think you should probably take a step back. And I think like maybe we want to reduce alcohol. Like I just want to balance the industry and bring people back to the middle ground where I think you do a wonderful job of being. Um, and so I obviously alcohol is not good for you. Obviously. There's no argument for that. There's no like alcohol is actually very healthy. Of course not. What I find very interesting is I love looking at like culturally, globally, who lives the longest, who are healthiest societies. And for whatever it's worth, some of the longest living societies, whether it's Italians, the Greek, even in Japan, like they drink alcohol on a very regular basis, very regular. Now, we all talk about the dose determines the poison, right? They're not, they actually drink pretty frequently, but it's not to the point of belligerent drunkenness and it's not any dependency. And this is where I think the nuance is missing right now in the fitness industry. It's just you shouldn't have it at all. It's bad. Never eat it. And I actually think that many coaches who are generally anti-shaming, anti-guilting, anti-dogma are actually going down that rabbit hole with alcohol, saying it's always bad. You should never have it. And I'm like, whoa, 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 whoa. Like, let's come back a minute here. Obviously, having too much on a very consistent basis is not good. But we can take an objective look at the data globally and understand that it is absolutely doable for someone who does not have alcoholism, and if you struggle with alcoholism, don't do it. Fine. I get it.
Yeah.
That's totally fine. But for someone, an otherwise healthy individual who can have a healthy relationship with it, I don't see a problem. I just don't. And yeah, that's my current position on it.
No, I appreciate that. And I see you like it's funny, like it'll go this way and I'll be like, oh, but Jordan's still over here like doing his thing, trying to go back and forth. But it's interesting that you say this globally, right? Because I'm sure you've heard this before, right? The US, where we reside, has a different food administration. Maybe we're potentially getting different products that people are getting globally. So, we see all these people living healthy lives and eating all the carbs like Italy, right? Or drinking all
Yep.
the wines. Do you feel like that comes into play with alcohol or just with food in general for Americans?
I would be beyond ignorant to say that doesn't come into play. I think it absolutely does.
Yeah.
What I think comes into play more is the overall lifestyle of these individuals. So I think one of the biggest problems in the United States, and potentially just the West in general, but I only live in the United States, is an outrageous amount of stress and focus on work and a sedentary lifestyle. These are the major things that I see killing us very quickly. Um, and when you compound that with excessive alcohol intake and you compound that with uh, lower quality foods, well, now like you, you're going down a bad path. And
Mm.
I think the culture of European countries, whether it's Italy or obviously Japan isn't a European country, but Japan or Greece, these cultures are they don't base their success off of their income as much. They are much more family focused. They're much more community focused. They're much more they work to live. They don't live to work. And personally, I think that that is the major reason that they tend to be living long because their diets are very different.
Right.
Japan versus Italy versus Greece versus Switzerland, all in the top 10 longest living countries in the world, diets are dramatically different. The lifestyles are actually somewhat very similar. A lot of walking, a lot of family community focus, a decent amount of alcohol consumption, but they're not working 8 hours, 10 hours a day, 5, 6, 7 days a week. Like they work much less, and it's much more relaxed work that they're often doing. Oftentimes, work that people here in the US look down on.
Mhm.
And so that would be what I think is much more important. To be fair, like I am, if that's the barometer for health, I am living a very unhealthy life. I'm very stressed. I work a lot. And I'm not practicing what I preach, just to be forthright. But I do think that, and I think it's funny when I have family in Israel, like when I go to Israel, my life changes immediately. Like my stress goes down, my work goes down. I'm with the family way more often. Like it is very much environmental for sure. So um that's one thing I'm trying to work on is to try and work less so that I can hopefully be around a little bit longer.
That was my next question. Are you leaning more into that lifestyle and like what are you doing to hopefully get there?
I'm not right now. I'm not right now. I'm working a lot right now.
Yeah.
Life is very high stress right now. Um, between almost 2 year old baby on the way. We just got a puppy, and running a couple businesses is CEOs don't have the longest lifespan. Like that's just they don't. Which is funny because especially among successful CEOs, by success I'm only using monetary value as a point right now. Um, they should have all the resources in the world to live as long as they possibly can, but they're not living the longest. And I think it's partly because of how much stress they put themselves under when they work. So I'm very well aware. I'm hoping that I will take the action. Like I'm at a point where I know, but I'm not taking action, right? It's like I'm in that same spot, sort of like wow, like full circle moment for the podcast where it's like I know what I need to do. I know what's important for my health, but I'm not doing what I need to do because my priorities are elsewhere. So, I think the main thing for me, number one, I love what I do for sure. Um, I'm also in a place of I want to make sure my family is very financially stable and I come from an unstable, like a financially unstable family. So that fear is sort of what drives me to continue in many ways. So hopefully I can calm that fear down a little bit. But yeah, I'm not practicing what I preach on that front.
Well, your fear did calm down with the divorced living situation and you were able to get married and have kids and create
That's
your
true. That's
own
very true.
life, right? So it's interesting because we were talking before this, I met you 5 years ago. I think it was 2019. I was in New York City. I was super excited to meet you. And I think you're such an awesome coach and just an overall amazing human being. And it's I just thank you so much for being on the podcast today. But how different is your life now in Dallas, Texas, I believe, right? Or
Yeah,
Fort Worth,
Dallas. Yep.
with family of almost four, and like building this whole new life and app and everything. How different is it from 5 years ago?
Oh, it's completely different. I mean, even just moving from New York to Dallas.
Yeah.
But I mean, we were living in the heart of New York City and now we're in the suburbs in a house. And I will say it's the greatest joy that I've ever had. Like I'm more fulfilled than ever. Um, it's it's so funny like what a child has brought into my life. Like even like we go on a walk every morning as a family and like the way she looks at a leaf, it
Mhm.
makes me question everything. It's just like she's just, oh my gosh, look at this leaf. And she holds it so delicately and she's studying it. And I'm like, she's right. Like this is amazing. A leaf is amazing. Like this is incredible. And in New York City, I'm just like horns are
Yeah.
honking and there's no trees and it's just
Yeah.
like get to the next place. It's much slower and I'm much more present and I love it way more. Um it's this is the right place for me right now. And I think back then that was the right place for me then, but I'm definitely in the right place for me now for sure.
Where can you see yourself in another 5 years?
It's funny. Anytime people have asked me that, it's always been in relation to business, and I've never had an answer for it. I have no
Yeah.
clue from a business perspective. From a family perspective, I would love to have between 3 to 5 kids.
5
Um,
kids. 5 kids in this economy?
I know, isn't that wild? I know, I know, I
That's
know, I
funny.
know. It's um the my wife and I we really want to have a house that is like loud. and just like nuts. And maybe we're glamorizing it or sensationalizing it in our heads. I don't know. But every day when we go to bed and we're exhausted, where it's like, oh, that was tough, but like we're fulfilled and feel happy about it.
Yeah.
So I don't know. Things could change. You never know what life is going to throw at you. But in my current dream of what the future could look like is much less work, much more time with family and more kids. And I mean, I would love to ask you what your thoughts are in terms of like what you'd like to do. But for me, um, something about having a baby is like just literally the most amazing thing I've ever experienced. It's like the most amazing thing I've ever experienced in my life. And before I had kids, I'd always be like, all right, yeah, 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 I get it. But like it's literally like I don't know how to articulate it. I think I've never done psychedelics or anything like that. Nothing against it, but I've
Yeah.
never done it. I've never been in a situation where like, you didn't want to do this. But many people who've done it have told me that they've like seen colors they've never seen before, or they've experienced things they've never experienced before. When my first daughter was born, I experienced emotions that I had never experienced before, and I experienced love in a way that I didn't know existed before. And that's the best way I can describe it. It's like it's feeling things I've never felt before. Um, so if I can keep doing that and keep having more of them, great. And I know when they get to be teenagers, I'll be like, why the fuck did I do this?
See you later.
But
Yeah.
and if it's not too personal, do you think you want kids? Like, and if you don't feel comfortable, you can delete this or not answer.
No, it's totally fine. It's funny. I'm in this space in my life where we're both in our mid 30s. I think we're around the same age. I'm 35, where there's a lot of pressure. There's a lot of pressure of
Yeah.
society and just timeline, but I'm also like very career driven and we really enjoy our lifestyle right now.
Yeah.
And we go back and forth. Honestly, it's tough being on the fence more than anything else because then there's just so much uncertainty. And I it's a little bit harder as a woman, I will say. I
It's way
appreciate
harder. It's not even close. It's
it's
not even
like
close.
it's just and like with my lifestyle and with what I do for work and how I move my body and body image, and there's just so many factors that I'm still kind of working through myself. And so I think like we'll have a better understanding in maybe a year or two, but at this point, not yet.
Cool.
It's kind of
Great.
where we are. But
Well,
I always appreciate your point of view, and everyone that I really talk to is like, it is this like life-changing thing, but also it's so hard. And I never hear you talk about sleep. Like, tell us about some of the crazy stuff because you're
yeah.
always like, oh, the leaf, this beautiful. And then you have a puppy. Like, there's so many things happening, but I know there's more craziness in that house too.
Oh my gosh, it's insane. It's insane. It's
Yeah.
unbelievably difficult. Um, so the first couple months for us were brutal. And when
Mhm.
I say us, really for my wife, it was
Yeah.
difficult for me. Like I was getting my workouts in at midnight because that was the only time I could do it.
Yeah.
Um, but the recovery from giving birth is just beyond what I ever could have imagined.
Right.
Um, the breastfeeding, holy shit. Like
Yeah.
I I had no idea, number one, how difficult it can be, how painful it can be, um, how emotional it can be. And I also had no idea how much judgment women are judging other
Yeah.
women based on how they're feeding their. I had no clue. Like the
Yeah.
judgment that other women give other women based on how they're breastfeeding or if they're breastfeeding or bottle feeding or what they're. Oh my God. I had no idea. It is quite frankly disgusting to
Mhm.
see how much judgment and anger and shaming and guilting there is. So that was wild. Um, my daughter is extraordinary for many reasons, and I know I sound like just a parent when I say it, but um, she slept through the night by 5 weeks. So
Wow.
by the fifth
That's
week,
great. Yeah.
she was sleeping a minimum of 8 hours a night. Um, and within 8 weeks, it was 12 hours a night. Um, it was like insane. And so it's funny, my wife is now talking like, oh yeah, so by 5 or 6, this one will be sleeping. I was like, you don't know.
Yeah.
Like,
They're
we
all
don't know.
different,
Like,
right?
unbelievable. Like it could be the complete opposite. You have no idea.
Hmm.
Um, I will say the best investment that we made was a night nurse.
Hmm.
Um, 2 nights a week. We had a woman come over, and I didn't know this was a thing. I learned so much. I learned
Yeah.
so many things. And we're very blessed that we had the income to be able to do this. She way undercharged. I told her, I was like, you should charge way more. Um, she would come work 2 nights a week. And the main reason I wanted it was not because of the sleep, but because of the education. So she worked in the NICU for like 20 years and like she knows babies. And I was like, I don't know. I could watch all these YouTube videos, but I have no fucking clue. So she came over and she taught us everything. And she taught us how to put her on a schedule, on a sleep schedule. And that's, she says, why she was sleeping through the night by 5 weeks because she was on a
Hmm.
schedule. And it wasn't
Yeah.
like, and it was funny because my mom was there and everything the night nurse was doing, my mom was like, this is literally the exact opposite. And my mom was a little bit like, I don't trust her. I did everything differently. And by the end of 5 weeks, my mom was like, I did everything wrong. Like, she's like,
Yeah.
I did everything wrong. Like, everything that she said, I did the exact opposite. And you were way more difficult. So, um, with that being said, I mean, now she's a toddler and she's a maniac. She's a maniac. She will do things purely to piss you off.
Mm.
Um, I was brushing her teeth the other night, and that's a whole of that's a shit show. Brushing her teeth? Are you kidding me? It's unbelievable. And I like had my finger like on some of her teeth to try and like open her mouth a little bit, and she bit me hard. But she didn't know, like she didn't know. She just bit me, and then I went, ow, and she smiled. And like
Oh
she
no.
got this shit-eating grin, being like, "Oh, that's all I have to do to," and so she will look directly in your eyes as she throws shit off of her like her high chair. As soon as she knows she's not supposed to do something,
Right.
she will do it. Like as like so literally, if we there are times where like if we don't want her to do something, like, hey, like do this, or like if we for example, like if we want her to try a food,
Yeah.
we'll be like, don't eat that.
Mm.
Don't eat it. And then
Yeah.
she'll eat it. And then, oh, you like it? Okay, you can eat it now. And then she'll eat it, but like because she likes the taste. But if she's being stubborn with something, we'll just say don't do it, and then she'll do it. Um, she's a
They're level
maniac.
twos for a reason though, right?
Oh
Like
my
they're,
gosh.
yeah.
It's crazy and it's an insane amount of work. And I'm interested to see what the next one is like, God willing. She's due any day now.
Yeah.
But my daughter is fucking tough. Like she ate shit on concrete the other day. She was running and she just boom, like ate shit. She gets up, doesn't cry, doesn't nothing. She just gets up and keeps going, scrape knees. Like it's pretty wild. Um, and I don't know, maybe people are just being nice, but everyone was like, this girl is just like she's so easy. Like she's so easy. And even she has her moments, but like she's not I'll tell you what the hardest part is. The hardest part is you're always on.
Yeah.
You're always on. You're always watching. You always have to be watching everything that's going into their mouth. Like you gotta baby proof the house, covering up all the fucking outlets, making sure she's not like when she figured out that she wasn't supposed to put her finger in an outlet, like
Yeah.
immediately trying to find every outlet to put her finger into. She tried to lick it.
Oh
It's you're
God.
you're always on, always. Even when she's sleeping, you're looking at she's sleeping. It's just it's a full time. It's not even it's not full time. It's all the time. It's overtime all the time. You're always watching. So that's the most difficult part in my opinion thus far. But also, as I'm sure you know, like anything that's difficult you are very glad that you did it. It's like, oh, I'm
Yeah.
glad. Like it was challenging, it was difficult, like it's been worth it.
Yeah.
And my buddy, he has multiple kids and teenagers, and he calls them snot-nosed teenagers. And so I'm sure that when they get to be snot-nosed teenagers, it'll be a very different story. But for right now, it is like the most amazing thing. I'm just obsessed with her, like
Yeah.
obsessed. It's just the toddler hugs, and when she says mom or dad or it's things that like you don't think about, but like it's I'm obsessed. I'm obsessed. I could talk about her for 10
Oh, I
hours,
love
so I
it
won't
so
take up all
much.
your time, but
It's
it's just
so sweet.
best.
And but like you're doing all this and you're so obsessed, but you also have a very successful business. And I want to give you the floor to talk a little bit about your inner circle and the other stuff that you're doing. Tell us about
I,
it.
I'll say this. I appreciate you giving me the opportunity to pitch. I'm not pitching. If anyone
Don't
likes
pitch,
my
just tell them about it.
Okay. All right. Okay.
Just
What I'll say is this, don't buy my stuff until you look at my free stuff first. So if you want to go to my podcast or my Instagram, that's fine. My inner circle is my membership. Um, it's a fitness membership, and I started in 2015, almost 10 years, which is crazy. And recently reinvested into making a brand new app, which do you have an app?
yeah, I'm investing quite a lot of money into an app right
Oh,
now as well.
oh my gosh. Oh
Yeah,
my gosh.
it's crazy.
Apps are way more expensive than babies.
Which I
Oh,
was trying to look, are you in the App Store or is it a
no,
web app?
it's a web app. It
Okay.
is a web app.
I'm going in the App Store and that's about feels like triple the price. So,
So I don't know the price of creation, but I do know one of the major issues with the App Store is when people buy it from the App Store, they take a
yeah.
huge percentage, like 20 or 30% of your income,
Yeah.
which,
It's 30, but we're going to pay through a website and then you'll download the app. Yeah.
okay, got it,
Yeah.
got it, got it. Okay,
Yeah.
that's smart. Yeah, I've always lived, from a business perspective, I've always lived by a rule, and I might be shooting myself in the foot, but the rule is don't build your house on someone else's lawn. And that's always been my fear with the App Store, in addition to them taking such a huge percentage when people buy through the app, but also if it's on their store, they can change the rules anytime they want. And that's what scares me in terms of if they want to increase that percentage, they can increase it. If they
Mhm.
change the algorithm, like whatever it is, like they have it just, and maybe this is my conspiracy theorist, like paranoia coming up, and probably nothing will happen. What I like about having it be a web app is I have full control over it at all times, and no one can change the rules on me.
Or are you on WordPress?
Um, I don't know because I don't know. I don't know why.
Okay. They can change anything there too.
Of
Yeah.
course. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Of course.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Unless like you're literally building everything on your own, then it's always something. But
For sure.
um, it's yeah, building the web app has been a hell of a fucking process, and it's
Yeah.
been great. Like we launched a new app. We have calorie counting. We have your calorie tracker. We have like my favorite part about it is the consistency calendar, and the consistency calendar is my favorite thing. It's an interactive consistency calendar.
Yeah.
You and I both know the main reason people don't succeed is because they're not consistent. And
Mhm.
so like it tracks your consistency over time. You can choose what you want to be consistent with, whether it's your calories, protein, fiber, water intake, steps, whatever you can choose. Um, and then if you are consistent, you'll get a voice memo from us. If you're not consistent, you don't get a voice memo from us. I'm sorry, if you're not consistent, you also get a voice, like you
I was
get
like, you don't
you
get anything from
you
us.
you get you get personalized voice memos based on
Oh, wow.
your consistency and what you do. So let's say you've been inconsistent for 3 days.
Yeah.
There's a voice memo you'll get being like, "Hey, listen, like you've been inconsistent the past few days. No worries, let's get back on track today, whatever it is." So
Nice. Yeah.
it's type of coaching without the coach actually being there, but we're still being aware of what you're doing and your consistency.
Cool.
And there's like a percentage tracker at the top. So like by the end of the month, we want you to be at least 80%. So like it will tell you what your percentage was. Obviously, we have workouts like dumbbell only workouts, full gym workouts with exercise video tutorials. Um, the nutrition database that we have, it's the same one that MyFitnessPal uses, so a very extensive nutrition database, but we don't track as much, and that was by design. We only track calories, protein, fiber. MyFitnessPal can sometimes be overwhelming with how
Mhm.
much you track, and like, oh my God, is my sodium okay? Da-da. It's like, listen, if you hit your calories, protein, fiber, you're good. In the next update of the app, which we're hoping will be by like November, December of 24, we're gonna have a non-calorie counting option. So
Awesome.
like for people who don't want to count their calories or protein or fiber, just a different way of tracking within the app, which we're really excited about. Um, and I mean, yeah, there's a lot more, but
Yeah.
what again, don't buy it. Look at my free content
He's
or just buy Tara's stuff. Like your stuff is great. Like you're an amazing coach. Go to Tara's. Don't buy my shit. If you want to listen to my podcast or Instagram, great, but buy Tara. Like you're an amazing host, an amazing coach. And
appreciate that.
if you're ever in Dallas, please, you and your husband, you always have a place to stay.
Yeah.
But yeah, buy Tara's shit. Don't buy my shit. Like
He's
it's
telling you
fine.
not to buy it though, like the toddler, so you will actually buy it, right? Okay, I do want to say though, I know you have something for personal trainers. People ask me all the time, like, do you do any business mentoring or coaching? And I'm just like, I don't do that. I don't have the capacity to do that. So I know you have a podcast, but do you also have that program still with your
Yes,
buddy
with Mike.
Mike?
Yeah, yeah. So if you don't sell that, then I'm more than happy to promote
Okay.
that for coaches.
Yes.
Yes. It's called the Online Fitness Business Mentorship. We have a free podcast called the How to Become a Personal Trainer podcast. So start there. We have hundreds of episodes with free information, but we do have a mentorship program as well that if you want to, you go to the online fitnessbusinessmentorship.com and you can apply and then we'll see if you're a good fit. And we, by the way, we do deny people. I'll tell you the fastest way to get denied. The fastest way to get denied coming into our program is if you say you're a high ticket coach who like charges like just you just want to make a lot of money. Like, nope, you're not coming in because we have an amazing group of coaches in there who actually want to
Yeah.
be better coaches and not just build their business, but yes, build their business, but become a great coach and learn how to
Yeah.
help their clients. So how to write programs, client psychology, nutrition, like it's an amazing group. And early on, we would let anybody in and quickly realize like they became cancer within the group.
Yeah.
And so then we changed the application process. And if anyone's like, yeah, I just want to make, if they're like, I want to make 10K a month as quickly as possible, like, nope, like this is why you're not being let in.
Yeah.
This is like what we expect from our mentees. And so if you want to reapply and give us something else, great. But like
Yeah.
this is not, you're not getting in with this.
Yeah. Otherwise, there's a lot of other coaches that'll probably help you get there in very sleazy ways.
Correct.
I have one more question for you and then we'll close up. I know we're over the hour. I just feel like I could
Yeah,
talk
no
to you about a
worries.
lot of things.
Whatever you
What
want to
is
talk about.
one thing that you wish you knew in a couple? We're going to take it in three ways. What's one thing you wish you knew before you started your fitness journey?
Um,
In the
one thing.
briefest sentence possible.
Oh, okay.
Let's
All
make
right,
these
cool.
quick.
Okay.
Yeah.
Uh, I wish I knew there was no perfect program, no perfect exercise, no perfect technique. It's much more just about like just do it. Just go. Just be active, do something. There's no perfect program. I would spend so much wasted time, the best set rep scheme, the best
Yeah.
technique. It's just fucking go. Just go. Do something. You're fine.
What's one thing you wish you know before becoming a coach?
Um, I wish I knew how powerful it was to say I don't know, but I'll find
Mm,
out. To admit when you don't know, to admit that you're not an expert in everything, and then also take the initiative to say, but I'm going to find out for you. I'm going to do
yeah.
research. Um, yeah, being able to admit when you're wrong or when you don't know is just, it's the most freeing thing.
Yeah, I love that piece of advice. And I have one more. What about before becoming a dad?
Oof, get ready to cry. I'm not a crier. I'm not a crier. I don't, my whole life I never cried.
Yeah.
That's there's some really crazy shit. I never cry.
Yeah.
As soon as I had my daughter,
Yeah.
I'm a crier. I don't know what the fuck happened. I don't know what the fuck like I'll watch
Why
movies.
is there? That's not a bad thing.
No, I'm not saying it's a bad thing. I'm just saying I wish I knew. I wish I knew
Okay.
that like it's funny like even just like I'm getting tears in my eyes like it's watching Man on Fire with Denzel Washington as he's coaching this like little girl in swimming and I'm like in tears. I'm, what the fuck? Like where does this come from? You know? So I wish I
Did
knew
you
I was going to be a
cry?
crier.
Did you cry at your wedding?
I cried when I proposed,
Okay.
not at the wedding. I did.
Okay.
It was funny. Like I was on my knee and trying to trying to like say what I had planned to say, and I was like, my wife was like, "What?" Like, I'm like trying to hold back the tears. Like she's like, "I don't know what you said." I was like,
Yeah. Can you
so I
do
cried,
that
but
again?
not the wedding, but when I proposed, I did.
Okay. All right. So there's still hope for my husband. He's not a crier either.
If you have kids, that boy's crying.
Oh, that's so cute. Well,
Especially if you have a girl. I mean, maybe with the boy, but if you have a
yeah,
girl, that dude's crying. I promise.
I love to hear it. Jordan, thank you so much for being here. I so appreciate you. Where can people find you online and message you? Because I know you're so great at answering questions.
Yeah, my podcast, the Jordan Syatt mini podcast, and Instagram. If you Google search Jordan Syatt, Syatt, you'll find all of my social
He's
media, podcast,
everywhere.
YouTube, all
It
of
has
it.
been
Yeah.
around for years and years and years. Thank you so much for being here. I appreciate your time.
Thank you. You're the best.